Ever wish a podcast would explain how to get better faster from the standpoint of longevity, biohacking, and personalized functional medicine? Co-hosts Dr. Jason Bradley and James Chester, along with executive producer Rachel Bradley, bring you the Get Better Faster podcast. Their mission is radically simple: to revolutionize health by connecting people with the experts, technologies, and protocols that mainstream medicine ignores. Because people deserve to get better faster.
All right. Hello, Get Better Faster Nation. I am Dr. Jason Bradley, and along with my co-host, the one, the only James Chester, and our incredible executive producer, Rachel Bradley, we want to welcome you to another exciting episode of the Get Better Faster podcast. Today, we're joined by a true game changer who's been called the Health Queen and Australia's leading hormone expert for a very good reason. With over 3.5 decades of experience spanning nursing, natural medicine, and corporate wellness, Dr. Beau Patrick is a naturopath and a hormone health expert who has transformed thousands of lives across the globe. She's a best-selling author of 10 books, soon to be 11, hosts 2 health podcasts, and has been featured on The Today Show and in Women's Fitness magazine. Dr. Sam specializes in helping both men and women overcome burnout, balance their hormones naturally, and reclaim the energy they thought was gone forever. She's the founder of SamBeauPatrick.com and Men'sHealthyEdge.com, where she's been pioneering natural approaches to testosterone health and peak performance. She just finished her latest book, Corporate Burnout: Recognizing the Red Flags, available everywhere. Without further ado, Sam, my good friend, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. What a beautiful introduction, and what an honor to be on your show. And thank you, James, as well, for having me on.
We're just getting started, so don't say thank you yet.
Okay.
But you've been in the health field 38 years, yeah?
Yes, I have. I started as a nurse. So years and years ago, when we were still hospital trained, I started in a little place south of Australia called Tasmania, on this beautiful island. And I started it when I was 17, and we were pretty much thrown in the deep end. And my first rotation was oncology. And at 17, I was holding people's hands as they took their last breath and explored death and what that meant. And really, it's a baptism of fire. And my next rotation was emergency nursing. Because we were the main capture centre for the whole state, we had gunshots to, horrific things. Yeah. So that was my foray into health.
So now you are branding yourself as the health queen, which I think is really, really cool, and it makes you stand apart from just a bush nurse.
Yes, and I'm not a princess. Well, I don't know, and I'm not a king. Look, it's a label that started years ago. So about 2002, I set up my own private practice, and it wasn't long after that. You explore names in business, and you're not just a clinician, you're a business owner. So you've got to match the two, and also get across marketing and budgets and staff, and you become a business owner essentially, but your craft is helping people. And the Health Queen came about probably in the mid-2000s, just before I wrote my first book on health, and it stuck. I kind of wax in and out of the, is it too much? Is it a bit wanky? Sorry, that's an Australian term, meaning I don't know what how that would translate in the States, but it's, is it too much? Is it over the top? But it's stuck with me, and it makes me live up to something some days I don't feel I am, which is, this is what you've got to be every day. You've got to be healthy, and you've got to be on top of your game. And I think in order to take advice from anyone, they've got to be the example of what they're preaching. Otherwise, why would you take advice from them? So it's made me very accountable over the years, that's for sure.
Well, you talked about writing books, and Dr. Jason opened up saying that you've written more than 2 handfuls of books, which is super impressive. But our next topic that I think you are taking a deep dive on is hormone health. And after 38 years of clinical work and authoring and branding, when did you know that you could get people better faster, particularly when it comes to hormone health?
This would be going back to 2002. So that was off the back end of being a critical care nurse, emergency nurse, 9 years in pharmaceuticals. So I actually worked for, the biggest GSK, and did a subcontracting gig with Pfizer for a couple of years and, 25 years on, have a different perspective of that. But at the time, I actually believed I was helping the end consumer, which was the patient. And I've always been about the patient, the client, the human, the person that, I signed up to help years ago. And you start realizing as a doctor, as a nurse, it's a calling. It's not necessarily a choice. And if you have it, then, you will find yourself in situations where you stop and help people and want to explore. And if you've got that nerdy side, like I'm quite a nerd as well, I really enjoy research and I like looking at social situations and try and unpack it from a medical perspective, I guess, because that was my lens as a nurse and in pharma. But then, I qualified as a naturopath, which means you get triple degrees. So you get a degree in nutrition, a degree in naturopathy, and also herbal medicine. So with this new toolkit, I wanted to really unpack why people got into situations they did from a natural perspective. People don't just suddenly get ill. The body is hardwired from pre-birth to survive. Like it's got so many incredible mechanisms that ensure that any threat is dealt with, triaged, managed, and we even have an incredible memory system called our unconscious mind, which is hardwired to keep us living. And then the second part to that is procreating and, enabling our existence to continue as such. So with that in mind, I entered my own business world with this vision to have practices all around Australia where doctors and nurses work together with homeopaths, with naturopaths to help the end consumer unpack why they got unwell. Back to your question, when did I kind of discover this thing? Probably when I was 10. I really dove into the hormone side of it. And just after I'd finished qualifying in 2002 and set up my practice, I knew a lot of doctors. Half of my patients were referred by specialists, obstetricians, gynecologists, GPs. And I was asked to speak at a medical conference. And I was asked to speak at menopause, on menopause and natural solutions. And, I was, fresh out of uni and, or from, qualifying, and I had all these things I wanted to share about eating rosemary and having, herbal medicine to an audience that were just like staring back at me and wanting to throw eggs and stones at me in a way. Like it was an interesting symposium. And I hadn't been through menopause at all. So I was, in my 30s, and menopause was something older women got. And over the years, what I have built upon is more knowledge, more information, more social witnessing, and then going behind the scenes, measuring why that's happening in certain demographics types, and then going, right, when this happens, when I see this series of symptoms and I listen to the person, I always listen to what the people are saying. Then I go, highly likely this is happening. And then you can start putting the threads together. Okay, well, physiology isn't made up. Physiology is run by a series of hormonal interplays. And when we understand that and can match it back to what people are doing in their lives, suddenly you've got solutions. And the solutions are just often so simple. And that's, to me, the joy of life, is helping people understand that whatever environment created their situation, they also can find solutions within their environment if they make some changes. So drugs are great. They help people. Going back the step prior to that, what got you into this situation, it, for me, is where empowerment and liberation lie. I just love it. Absolutely love it. So I don't know if I've answered your question or just opened up a can of worms, but yeah, I love helping.
We like opening cans of worms, though, so I think that's totally okay, right? So I love that. Thank you for that answer. And I want to dive into hormones. As when we were in the green room before the show, I can't wait to dive in there. But I have some questions, because naturopathy in the United States is, I don't want to say it's similar to in Australia, but we have 50 states and some territories, and naturopathy, I think, is regulated in 17 of those states. And it's a free for all everywhere else, and not really considered, true medicine, so to speak. Although in those 17 states, those naturopaths, all they want to do is prescribe drugs. I mean, they want to be real doctors. And so it's the most bizarre thing, in my opinion. So my question is, I'd love for you to walk me through and I don't know what word I want to use here, but the medical tenor in Australia, especially what it's like practicing natural medicine down under. Tell me about that.
It'll be my perspective and my opinion. So
Sure.
others might have a different experience with this, but I can say it's been a slog. So being a business owner in Australia is really hard work at the moment. We've got circumstances happening politically which are not fostering small business growth. That is for sure. So that part is hard in an industry that's not supported necessarily by government. And in fact, in 2017 in Australia, the government presented a paper that said that natural medicines do not work. There's no evidence to suggest that natural medicine works at all. So all the private funding withdrew reimbursements for natural medicine, a range of things, massage, etc. I believe acupuncture and chiropractic, well, they are definitely still covered, but they have very strong lobby groups. Whereas in Australia, the natural and naturopathy lobby group historically have just, I don't know, been ex-practitioners who, really beautiful people and idealistic people, but aren't necessarily strong politicians. So policy-wise, not very well supported. Certainly in terms of the health arena, you will find, or I have found, that doctors often will just poo-poo it. And when I've always twilighted, I kept my nursing going till 2016 and would work in intensive care or emergency because I just loved it and had a lot of friends in those groups. And I just remember specialists going, "Oh, you're going to sprinkle some herbs on the patient?" I just used to go, "Mate, one day you're going to need me." That's cool. That seizure that's not stopping, why don't we give them some magnesium and see it stop? Oh, how do you know all this stuff? It's like, it's biochemistry. I've been to uni multiple times. I've learned biochemistry. I've just decided to use biochemical solutions from Mother Nature, not from the lab. That's all. But it's been a tough slog, that's for sure. And certainly I would suggest that some of the best healers aren't necessarily the richest people in this country, even though they should be. It's just not supported by our infrastructure and our healthcare system. That's all. It's like you go to, and I don't want to diss doctors because I've got lots of friends that are doctors and I work alongside them, and I love the client who comes to me and they're complicated. I get sick people from all around the country, and I'll say, "I want to work with your doctor on this." Just ask them, and the ones who say yes, I go, "Oh my gosh, we're going to be such a great team for you." Because it should be about the focus of the patient. It shouldn't be about our egos and what we think we know and what other people don't know.
I just always am reminded when you say, magnesium with seizures as an example, the body, as we all know, is basically made out of 6 things: proteins, fats, some complex, carbohydrates or starches, vitamins, minerals, and water. And we can break down every tissue, every hormone, every cell. I mean, it's made out of that stuff. And when I talk to traditional physicians or traditional doctors, I don't like the word traditional there because I think that can imply like they're doing like traditional medicine, which is when I think of that, I'm thinking or indigenous medicine and plant medicine. What I mean is conventional pharmaceutical based care. When you start having discussions about how did you know that about magnesium? And the answer is it's like basic biochemistry. I mean, just like you said, it's mind blowing to them. And I'm like, you guys prescribe, in my opinion, dangerous drugs all day long and don't even understand the mechanisms of action or the effects on, fill in the blank with the body. So I appreciate, you pulling magnesium out. I love that. James, I know you had something that you wanted to throw in there too.
I have a plethora of things to talk about, but I'll get into deeper dives as the conversation goes on. But you mentioned something about overreaching government controlling standard of health. And what do they know about standard of health? And
Yes.
What, you mean our politicians? They don't know things about health? What are you talking about?
I think our health don't even have medical backgrounds. They've done public health as a uni degree. A lot of them. Making imposing decisions a lot of the time on people's outcomes and quality of life.
And welcome to the trenches, baby. Like, how are you going to know how to do what you want policy to be if you've never been there? And I think that's really what you're talking about when it comes to finding your way from being the practitioner to now being an expert in this field is you've actually walked the walk. And, when people send you and co-manage cases with you, what a gift. And It's a collaborative effort. The reason that some teams are so successful is because they have somebody working with different disciplines within that team to be a winning team. And when we start to think about this and stop compartmentalizing the medical arena and say, hey, yeah, you should have a talk therapist. Of course. You should have a chiropractor. You should have somebody looking at your labs. Of course, you should do cold plunging and sauna therapy. Of course, you should do hyperbaric chambers. So it's a multidisciplinary approach to getting people healthy rather than following the dogmatic approach of a policy that people have no idea why they're driving this down except for making money. And I just believe that when you want to uncover the truth is there's no money in healthy people. And that's what Dr. Jason was explaining earlier. And when you find out that there's solutions to making people healthy through methods of maybe some herbs, like you said, hey, mate, you might want to try some herbs, and you're probably just a little low on magnesium. So when you think about the outcomes, we can go simple, but it comes from an educated mind and a learned skill set in order to go simple. It's not from some policy.
I think that policy issues are a big thing. They're plaguing America as well. Rachel is always in the background, by the way, saying, don't be political, don't be political. And I'm like,
She's probably going time out time.
and the thing is, it's like, I mean, it's health and it's political. I mean, it's like people's life, life and well-being. And I mean, those of us that are in the trenches know just how political it is and how much we butt our heads up against the system, especially those like yourself that are patient-centered, that just want to help people, help as many people get, well, I'll plug the show, Get Better Faster, but you want to help as many people as you can, with your time here on the planet. And I just appreciate that with you. So I'm going to pivot just a little bit. And I want to take us into hormones because you are the hormone expert. You're the health queen. And what do you think, or what are you seeing as the biggest hormone-related health crisis facing both men and women today? And what's being missed by conventional medicine?
One of the things I'll say, and I say to people when I talk about menopause, for example, ladies will go, oh, but mum didn't have symptoms of menopause, therefore I'm okay. And I go, that is an absolute myth. What was happening 20 years ago in society is radically different to now. We're using more glyphosates than ever before. Our food is adulterated with weedicides and pesticides because apparently the planet's running out of food. There are more synthetic foods, and there are things, I would just call them synthetic chemicals, wrapped up in a bag that says chips or, some rubbish. When the body is bombarded with all that extra stuff it's got to try and decipher, it puts the temple, the organism, under a lot of strain. And I think the overarching thing, aside from work and mental stress and finances, and everyone wants to have the 2 cars and holidays here and there and all these other value systems that seem top-heavy for money and materialism, and diluting community and care and the very blue zone values, the religious values, all those values that have stood the species really well over time, have become less valuable and shortcut. And I would say burnout, physiological, mental, gut burnout is the overarching issue that people are facing individually. And also, that reflects in chronic disease. People just start creating within themselves autoimmune diseases or inflammatory diseases because their cortisol's been so high for so long. Or, like once you start looking at the big players that are really killing off the species, majority of them are, I don't want to say self-induced because it sounds like people are sabotaging themselves, but are created by our environment. And that is the thing that has radically changed. If you look at how long humans have been on the planet, the only real big changes have been the last couple of years. In the last 50 years have been a boom in vaccines in our babies and children, the amount of drugs that we shove into people, the change in food, and the change in work dynamic. So women now are in male constructs working. We used to have more delineated roles. We were biologically over eons well-versed to fall pregnant, breastfeed, have babies. And I'm not trying to upset any of your listeners if they've got different views on this, fine. I'm just speaking very biologically here. And I call them pink kind of sets. And men were biologically designed to be stronger, faster, whether we like it or not, more compartmentalized mentally when they think. So they only can do one thing at once, which isn't a weakness. It's a strength. Ask any girl who's got, trying to work and thinking about the kids and dinner. Like, it is debilitating sometimes. That's not a superpower. It just depends on the lens you've got on the day. So those things have been there for years, but what we have done in the last 50 years to change that has really led us to where we are now, which is the sickest species on the planet. I've never seen another species that nurtures the sick as much as we do. They let the sick go to enable the strength of the species, but it's not unheard of for 60-year-olds to be on 10 tablets now. And in fact, if you make it to 60 on no medication, people are like, huh? Are you a really alternate hippie or something? It's like, they're suspicious. That's what we were designed to do. We were designed to, relax, sleep, and take care of ourselves. And hormones are a big part of understanding why things fall apart.
Totally true. And I think just to kind of underscore what you said, there's endocrine disruptors, meaning that there's things out there that upset our hormone systems, petrochemicals, pesticides. Speaking of humans and the absurdity of humans, we're the only species I know that sprays poisons on our crops to keep other animals from eating them, and then we eat them. It's ridiculous if you just break it down to that statement. We always talk about, when we borrow this from chiropractic philosophy, the universal and the innate and the educated intelligence, the universal being the creator intelligence or the God intelligence or whatever is inside all of us, the innate intelligence, that fractal of that universal that's inside every one of our cells and our DNA that knows, like you said, people don't just suddenly get ill. The body's amazingly created and wired to be healthy. That's that innate intelligence. And then we have the educated intelligence, which is everything we learn along the way. And I always like to say it's the educated that gets in the way. Our environment, I always say that our environment and our bodies have been hijacked by the educated intelligence. And we try to outsmart Mother Nature. And to quote Tom Waits, brilliant singer-songwriter, if you guys aren't following him, he's getting a little up there in years, but Tom Waits has a great line in one of his songs that says, "You can drive out nature with a pitchfork, but she'll always come roaring back." And I think that we're finding that, now. I want to go back, and I know James is back here, and I want to ask this quick question, and then we'll see how this goes. I know that you said you don't want to offend our listeners, and I don't think anybody's offended on this show. I don't think so. If they are, that's okay. We can have engagement and discussion. I think that we're all, open to discussion. But I have gotten in trouble in the past. I don't know if that's the right word. I've not law trouble, but just like, oh, you said something that's not appropriate type of trouble. Saying things that there is a difference, in my opinion, with biological males and females and the healthcare that they need to actually be healthy. Because our cells, our DNA, our hormones, everything wired in that system is wired to be biologically male or biologically female. I've gotten chastised a little bit publicly for saying things like that. I was just at the Great Lakes Convention and heard Dr. Elizabeth Board, medical doctor, speaking prolifically on hormones. And she essentially said the same thing. And she actually kind of covered it the way you did, which was, I don't want to offend anybody, but there is a difference in her opinion, in my opinion, of biological male and female. As a hormone expert, I don't want to say like, do you agree with me? I don't know if that's what I'm exactly asking, but I mean, tell me about the different needs of biologically male and female. And I'll give my own caveat here. I'm not saying people don't have choices and decisions and can choose to live any way that they want. We're not talking about that. I'm talking about DNA, cellular health, tissue health, and system needs. I'm just wondering your opinion on that. Is there a difference between biologically male and biologically female medical needs?
I would say, of course. And it's a shame that as, specialists in our areas, and, you're an incredible physician. And here we are questioning what we're saying is we don't want to offend people, even though we need to actually keep saying what we're saying. Because if we don't, like in Australia, we've passed some laws, which I just hope are overturned, that 4 and 5-year-olds have to declare whether they're a he, she, they, it, or some other pronoun as they go to preschool. Librarians, notes are going around that librarians have to write down whether it's a boy or a girl or identified as other. So we've got people in Australia, we've got a strong, growing population of fairies. And these are girls who believe they're cats. And the schools are accommodating them. They're cutting holes in their skirts so their tails can go there. One girl had to go and see a psychologist because someone sat on her tail. They've got kitty litter in the toilet because they won't use toilets. At some point, the village elders need to say, we all go through these phases. I get it. But as wisdom and also physiological wisdom, we need to say that we need to hold a strong bowl around the community as it explores these avenues. Not to say they're right or wrong, but to say that, hey, biologically, guys have these strengths, women have these strengths. You can want to be a guy all you like. You want to be a girl all you like, fill your boots, but don't make it the normal. Do not make it that, I used to do a keynote talk years ago, and it was my keynote talk for presenting, and it was women are becoming men. That was the talk. And it was about women raising testosterone because that's the male hormone, which we both share. And I'll keep this just males and girls rather than all the 72 options. Women were pushing up testosterone. I saw testosterone and I consider it not a sex hormone, but a stress hormone. So it's a prodigy of women entering work environments, having KPIs and trying to adapt to the male. It's a stress on the body and it's a get out of my way, I've got stuff to do hormone. So that title was fine. Women are becoming men. And the talk off the back end of that, and men are becoming women. So men are raising female hormone, estrogen, and getting things like man breasts and love handles and prostate cancer and depression. And they can't become indecisive like we are. Like we sit down and have a coffee and they're like, oh, the other day. And it's like, you're meant to be decisive. Us girls biologically need men to make decisions, right or wrong. We need them to be decisive. And I can't really do those talks now because it's deemed offensive, or probably maybe 3 or 4 years ago, I did do a talk at a large festival on that topic. And I had a lot of people in the audience who wanted to know about hormone replacement so they could, if they were men, they wanted to know how to become a woman. They actually wanted to change their sex. And I'm like, actually, I'm not that person. I'm more the old school. I think guys were born with certain attributes. We were born with certain skills and we should never be ashamed of them. We should learn to foster them and learn how they become our super strengths and not to be ever shamed or try and placate them or dilute. So I'm the old school who will be at the bastion of, your DNA, your psychology, unless there's that very small group that were born with both sex parts and both brain parts and la-di-da. I would like to see that the species keeps that delineation there.
Yes. And thank you for sharing all that. And Dr. Jason, thank you for also sharing your considerations on not offending people. And Dr. Sam, thank you for also sharing your considerations for not offending people. I'm not a doctor. I don't have any medical background. My background's in journalism and marketing. So I'm very bullish. And some people will either really love me or they're really like, who is this guy? And I come from the school of, from Kindergarten Cop. Do you remember that movie with
Arnold
Schwarzenegger? Boys have penises and girls have vaginas. And that's as simple as you need to get. And to accommodate this clown world that's being created around us is unacceptable. And to think everybody wants to drive to Clown Town with their kids thinking that they go to potty in a litter box is Clown Town. And I just think that if we perpetuate that way, society will collapse. And there are some ramifications when people are inside of that matrix and they don't know that there is a quality of life for people being regular people. And there doesn't always have to be some estrangement of, I want to be this way. Can you help me? Why don't we help you be who you are and start from there instead of transitioning to something that is, I don't know. I'm super polarizing on the topic because we're talking about hormones and health and libido and really procreation. And if you want to get to the brass tacks, having good testosterone and not having women burn out from being men and have their adrenals burn out from holding masculine energy and doing men work when men aren't present. That's the real thing is we're talking about procreation and evolution of our society and our species. Whether somebody likes it or not, I don't give a rip. That's where we have to go back to and course correct and say, look, this is who we are. This is how we've evolved. And this is what we'll continue doing if we want to continuously evolve and flourish and thrive. But that being said, I know I just went really for the jugular on that one, but I want to go back and me not being a doctor, I don't even know where a jugular is. When we talk about
most doctors these days don't know either, Jen. So you're totally
Masturbation for a while. Woohoo.
but going back into two topics I want to really explore with you after I cleared the air with what you guys were discussing. Ideal levels of testosterone in both men and women. How do you determine that?
Yeah. And can I just sign off on that men and women thing? I don't want to get hate mail or anything. It's more that I also don't want to be, I'm 56. I don't want to be the woman who's had 3 children who becomes the anti-society, demonized, abnormal one. I still want to, and I do feel like that, and plenty of my friends do as well. We feel like our voice is a minority at the moment because of what's happening globally. And it's like, don't make us feel abnormal because we wanted to have babies and we're proud of our boobies. We're girls and we want to stand in our strength. We don't think everyone should be like us. We don't, fill your boots, do what you want to do, but do not normalize and put my children in a vacuum of it's abnormal to be heterosexual, please, and want to have babies as a woman.
Amen. Amen.
Yeah. Anyway,
I like you say fill your boots.
so there's probably a few Aussie slang things that come out. Okay, so testosterone, how do we measure it? There's always, Jason and I are both scientists to a degree. We like to have validation of what we believe is happening as clinicians, which is clinical assessment, listening to the person, even doing basic measurements, touching them, assessing them, seeing the color of their skin, looking at their nails, and things that after a while you unconsciously do. And I'm sure with both of you and other people in this arena, you also unconsciously read their energy, hear their tone. And it's not our first rodeo, and it's not like we pigeonhole people, but we see certain symptoms and clusters of things that we know are alluding to a probable this or that. So, differential diagnosis is well established before we even go and test. But testing for testosterone, I personally prefer saliva testing. Now, you can do it on blood testing, but you've got to be very good and measure serum hormone binding globulin and have it in certain days and times. And it can be quite complicated. And sometimes, so serum testing is a blood test. And actually, let me just go back a step. For testing on hormones in general, there are multiple body fluids we can use to determine what's happening with someone's hormones, but it depends on the hormone. There's no point me doing a hair test trying to work out what the current insulin level is in someone's body. And to go back another step before that, hormones, so people know, are the body's internal courier system. So it's like a postal service that takes a message from one part of the body to another, gets a response down there, and then there's what's called a feedback mechanism. So the initiating gland or body part gets a receipt saying, we got that message, thank you. You can stop sending down the hormone now, we're actioning it. So that's called biofeedback, and that's the role of hormones predominantly, is to say, I don't know, crikey, my life's under threat. So parts of the body will say, right, adrenal glands pump out adrenaline and noradrenaline, or epinephrine, norepinephrine, and cortisol, which will go up to the heart, make it beat faster, blood pressure goes up, and a cacophony of things happen. So that's the hormone system. Now, to measure those hormones, it depends on what we want to measure. If cortisol, for example, one of the primary stress hormones, and I'll come back to testosterone in a second, cortisol can be measured on urine, it can be measured on a blood test. I prefer saliva. And I prefer getting samples over the day so I can see what morning cortisol levels are, because they really should start to kick in upon waking. They should peak around midday, taper off as the day goes on, and as they drop down, melatonin kicks in. So they work in unison. So I will use saliva testing for that measurement at DHEA and sex hormones. However, if I want to know someone's insulin levels and what's happening on a minute by minute even. I've started using continuous blood sugar monitoring, those patches you put on your arm for education for people, different testing. So it depends on the hormone, what you're trying to achieve. But with testosterone and measuring it in men and women, I'll get my, I'll chat to the person. I'll have a fair idea, but I always say test, don't guess, particularly after andropause and menopause, because the symptoms can be masked by other hormones. And I'll do a saliva test. And the incredible thing about a saliva test, it's not covered by your healthcare system or Australian healthcare system or New Zealand or UK or anywhere. It's an out-of-pocket expense. It is the best expense to spend on your health because it gives you so much information. And when you get your numbers, you go, oh, right. It validates everything. And it gives people a real starting point of where they need to set their compass to improve themselves. Without that, pretty much going blind. So I'm a huge fan of testing. It costs money, but I think it pays massive dividends.
Thank you for sharing so much information about ideal levels for both men and women, about testosterone and how to find out the baseline. And yeah, sometimes you have to pay to play. Investing in your health is not against. It's like if you want to eat, what do? You pay for food. If you want to get healthy, what do? You pay for processes. It's not somebody else's responsibility to pay your bill to make you find out what's going on and make you healthy, number one. And then my follow-up question to that about the testosterone was when you talk about men's health, and I'm going to use your Australian vernacular, do these blokes give you any pushback on you being an authority for them in the men's health arena?
It's been an interesting journey, this one. So for years, I've been helping men and women, and at various times, it'll be 50-50% of my clients are men, women. Then it'll bounce up to 80% depending on the activities or talks I've just given or what might be going on activity-wise. But earlier this year, and I say this lovingly to all my women going through a natural transition menopause, but they started to wear me down. And there's a real push in Australia that the narrative is, and I'll come back to guys in a sec, but the narrative is you're going through menopause, you've got symptoms, you're broken, you need HRT. And that share of voice has just been almost bombarded from the window. So women are going, I've got a flush, I need HRT, I'm not making hormones. And I pushed back and said, really? You really believe that we've all just got to 2025 and suddenly gone, this is an Aussie term too, tits up, and we can't, help ourselves? I thought, how anti-feminist, how disempowering to outsource a natural process because you don't want to take the time to understand it. Oh, I don't know where to find that information. I can't afford it. And it just wore me down. So I leaned more into men's health this year and started up the Men's Healthy Edge. And that was all about guys knowing their scorecard, knowing what their testosterone is, because I believe if a guy doesn't know his numbers, he also doesn't know himself. He doesn't know where his performance should be, at his energy levels, any questions about mental health, often there's solutions found in the hormones. So put a lot of effort into it. Interviewed Bruce Buffer from UFC about testosterone in the ring and trying to get these conversations going for men to pique their interest about male hormones, particularly testosterone and estrogen, because they are one in the same in a way. So a lot of effort, a lot of energy, thinking all the CEOs would gush at me getting their tests done. Turns out men don't often come forward to get themselves tested. Turns out that the wives or the partners it's the women who still say, hey, you need to go and get tested. And even then they're met with resistance. So they'll often go and do it. And then the guy just spits into the thing and goes, and I'll get them on these calls and they'll go, oh, what were you looking for when you did this? Oh, I did it for my wife. Okay. And then, is everything okay in life? Yep. Yep. And then I open up their results and I go, oh, this is quite interesting because your testosterone is actually very low. And when guys get low testosterone, often they'll struggle with mental confidence.
Mm-hmm.
And then suddenly they go, oh, yeah, I've been struggling with that. Oh, okay. Tell me about that. Oh, well, this is, and the pressures of this and that. And then this dialogue opens up. And I'll say, have you ever thought about killing yourself? Oh, yeah. I had 4 guys in this fortnight who had all said they had plans, and they're farmers. And they were that broken, but they'd never, ever sought help. And it was just their wives that had done this test for them. And it led to this conversation where I could say, right, we need to, start with your hormones, but also start with some safety things and other things you have to do as a practitioner. That's what I discovered with men, that they don't often go that next step and test themselves. There are certainly a percentage of people who they want to know their numbers, that are probably hypervigilant, and every year I get this done and this done, la-di-da, and they're very proactive with their health. But I'd say majority of guys are not that person. It's just, I don't know. Would you agree with that, Dr. Jason?
No, I totally agree with that. And in fact, I'll just share a little bit of my testosterone story. Many years ago, before I knew any better, I was talking to my general practitioner, and I was sure I had low testosterone. I had some symptoms. I mean, I felt like I was having a hard time losing weight, putting on muscle mass. I was tired. Quite frankly, I was depressed. And to be fully transparent, I don't know if I was suicidal, but I didn't really have a will to live. I would just say that. My life was not the way I wanted it to be, and I didn't feel like I had a psychiatric problem. I felt like there was something else going on, and I was kind of hoping it was testosterone. So, I went in to see my male general practitioner, and I won't say his name. He's a very nice guy, but he was a little rotund, to be, like, frank. And, we're over here at the University of Iowa, which is, like, hippie capital of the Midwest. And he had, like, his Birkenstocks on with his wool socks, and he's a little tubby, and he asked me one question, and he said, "Can you get an erection?" And I said, "Well, yeah." And he's like, "Well, it's not your testosterone then." And that's it. That was as deep as it went. He didn't order anything. He didn't, like, there was nothing, and he literally referred me out for psychiatric evaluation because I was tired and depressed and not I don't know if it was suicidal ideation, that's the wrong way to say it, but, I didn't have a will to live anymore, so to speak. And that actually turned the corner with me on understanding testosterone and understanding men's hormones more so than I'd spent a lot of time with women's hormones, but not a whole lot of time with men's hormones. So this led me to writing an article for one of the largest newspapers in the country, the Chicago Tribune, in their science section. And it was called Deficiency in Disguise. Could low testosterone be the cause of your depression? And, I thought it was like groundbreaking work at the time. And this was, I don't know, probably 20 years ago or something like that. And it really helped me to understand the absolute need of testosterone in not just I want to get, swole and I want to get buff. And like people think of testosterone in this way. It really is for me, my experience. And now having talked with men, and I think what I'm hearing from you is it really is an emotional hormone as well. There's a lot of emotionality around that hormone. There's a lot built in there. I'd love to hear more on the emotions around low testosterone.
Yeah. So, and for people who are listening to this and they might be going, "Oh, I've got one of those things." You don't need all of them. And typically with low testosterone, what I'll see is self-doubt, over texting in men. When I get long creeds of text from a guy, I'm like, oh, he's either got high estrogen or, self-doubting, depression, broken sleep. It's not all just about sex and desire and erection and performance. That is an element for some, but not all. Weight gain, heart disease. We know that men who have low testosterone are much higher cardiac risk and a risk of having a heart attack and stroke, prostate disease. But it is this I love it. It's a real juicy hormone. Now, both sexes make it. In women, like you can tell when I'm going into my masculine, we have this terminology, "Oh, you're in your masculine." It's like, yeah, I just bumped up my testosterone, get out of my way. Like it's very black and white, straight down the line sort of hormone. And for guys, it's essential. It is as important as breathing air because it sets up their physiology to be able to make those decisions, to unconsciously protect the species, to lift a truck if they need to. It makes them feel good. It's responsible for their energy. It helps them grow muscle mass. Without it, men just really pulp away, and they do. They lose that zest, that drive, that conviction, that belief, the sexual desire. Like we need guys to become guys. And once again, it's a prodigy of where we've come from in the last 20, 30 years. And I don't know, I haven't really watched Sex in the City, but when I do, I kind of pick up funny little vignettes about what's happening in the States, which is very similar here. We want our guys to sit down and have breakfast and coffee with us. And I don't know that that's historically what guys would have done. I think they would have, gone and done some high activity, some what we'd call high intensity activity, maybe meditated, caught a fish, come home, and we would have got the children ready. And there are activities guys can do first thing in the morning that will boost their testosterone naturally, and that sets the platform up for a brilliant day. If they go and have, a couple of milky lattes and fluff around and, I don't know, listen to an episode of some soppy show, they're coming from this, they're shrinking, not growing, and we want men to be strong. We need them to be strong. So yes, I understand where you would have been at for sure, and I think it's a travesty that GPs are not endocrinologists. They might do 2 weeks of hormone study like they've done with nutrition, and I believe that Senator Kennedy Jr.'s brought in mandatory nutrition for doctors over there. Giddy up, about time, because all our chronic disease has a food origin of sorts somewhere. Testosterone picked up by your average GP is really low probability, even if you sound depressed, or even if you hone in on your sex performance or how your experiences there, they're more likely to give you something like Viagra. So like, I should have the other name, not the trade name, or antidepressants, or mitigate these symptoms that are all coming back to a core issue, and that's you're not exercising, you're not moving your major muscle groups, you're eating rubbish, you're having dairy, which is switching up your estrogen, and you're low on zinc. Like, these foundations guys just can't bypass unless you want to end up on multiple drugs and having a crappy life.
Mm-hmm.
Can I jump in a little bit?
Please.
Yes.
Well, Jason, thank you for being so vulnerable, sharing your personal story, because people are going to learn from you. And you being an expert in this world when it comes to functional medicine and helping make people better. The only way to get there is admitting that something isn't going well. And like Sam was saying, she will question and find out, oh, everything's fine, everything's giddy up, and then realize that it's not, and then have to take a deeper dive and to help the individual out. So I think there's going to be a lot of people out there that are going to be watching this and listening to this. They're going to be like, I should probably just tell the truth. And excuse me, I've been swearing more today on our episodes than I have ever since we've been recording. I just feel this urge to like let people know how stark it is for people to just step in and say what they need to say and be who they need to be, because I'm going to end the show today saying no one's going to come and save you. You have to save yourself. And the only way to get a practitioner that's qualified to help you is to actually tell them what's going on and make their workload less by you being more transparent, so they don't have to run down rabbit trails to find out what your root cause is. If you just speak up and say, hey, my boner's not popping, I need help with it, or I'm having suicidal ideation, and that's going to be a great link in for somebody to help you. But don't go ask a farmer rep these questions. Ask somebody that is actually trained in functional medicine and the discipline of helping people without those potions and lotions.
I just want to jump in real fast, and I'm going to hand it right back to you. But I have said over and over, and I think that Sam is, the epitome of what I'm talking about here, being outside the system and working outside this. I mean, being fed up and frustrated within the system. I have said people are not going to find the solutions that they need for their health within a system that's allowed them to stay so sick for so long. I mean, it's so broken. It's such a broken system, not only here in America, but in Australia, in the UK. In Europe. It's so broken and pharmaceutically driven, and so symptom driven, as opposed to let's just help people get better and restore function to their bodies. In this, what did you call it? Not the vessel, the temple. I think you referred to it as the temple that we live in here. This beautiful body that we were all given, to house our spirits or our souls or our minds or whatever what do you call it. We're just not going to find the solutions in that bought and paid for medical, that medical system. I just wanted to say that. So Sam, thank you for stepping outside and having the courage to do that. James, right back to you.
Yes, thank you, Jason, Dr. Jason. We want people to avoid pharmaceutical intervention if possible at all times. I always say this, like Dr. Jason shares from his think tank of knowledge skill. I've never met anybody that was on more meds or had more surgeries that actually had more vitality and better quality of life. So you can't outguess biology with more meds and with more interventions from a scalpel. It just doesn't work that way. And that's the real thing is I believe we do an amazing job, probably globally, with emergency medical to save people's lives. But when it comes down to actually lifestyle and healthy lifestyle and quality of life quotient, I've never met. And here's the thing, our Sam, I've been a crusader for chiropractic for 17 years. And I've gone out to public events like farmers markets and county fairs and state fairs. And I've gone out there being an evangelist for the profession, scheduling people in and helping, at this point, 11,500 new people find chiropractic because I schedule them in one by one to offices. And because of that work, I talk to a lot of people in the public in the town square. And I will tell you, because of my practice and my expertise, is I've never met anybody that had better quality of life that was on more meds. They all have disconnection. They all have dysfunction. They all have some type of a fraction within their body that nothing's ever going to replace but getting healthy, eating real food, taking care of their body, making sure their nervous system's functioning. And there's not many solutions out there. And that's why I go back to it. We want people to avoid pharmaceutical interventions if all possible, because there's nothing going to save you from disaster unless you are more accountable. And like I said earlier, just tell the truth and be a good human and show up to these practitioners that spent 38 years, 26 years becoming substantial at what they do. If you want their help, let them know what's going on with you so they can help you faster. And then, damn it, spit in the jar, spit in the vial, get tested and find out the best pathways to go about it. But I think there's a lot that goes into the adrenals. I think there's a lot that goes into people's moods, sleep cycles, weight gain, chronic fatigue, low libido. And there's so many topics right there we could probably talk for another 5 hours on. But I know I'm opening up a can of worms with you because I mean to. But when you find people that come in with all these like downstream things, check the box, check the box, check the box. What's the one thing that you find to help regulate people fastest?
Probably mindset and belief. That would be the power tool. Just to conclude on what you were saying there, this was taught to me years ago at a holistic cancer seminar I went to for 3 days. And there was a gentleman in the room who is a physician, but also allopathic and like Dr. Jason. And he had better cancer treatment success rates than our main cancer centre in Australia. And he was using mesotherapy and other things as well. But I learned a lot from him. And he said that the biggest crime in medicine is helping somebody off the cliff and then returning them to the environment that created it without any change. So, sure, people might have, natural killer cells that sleep and then you end up with a cluster of cancer cells. There are multiple ways to manage that. I'm not saying chemo, radio, surgery, but there's plenty of other proven natural ways to do that. But to then get them out of that situation and return them to the exact same environment without modifying their food or their thoughts or their toxic exposure is the crime. And that's where, as physicians, we're letting people down because we're only doing half our job. But back to the one power tool, the same mindset, but I think to give someone a belief that they can do this comes from education. And I think that's why 3-minute medicine is flawed, because it has to become scripted, whereas Dr. Jason and myself would spend time getting to know people heart to heart, rapport, getting some trust from them that we can help them, making an unconscious pact with them that we will help them, and then leaving them with some education. So education of a little bit of understanding that this is possibly what's going on. Let's explore that. Because then they feel mastery of their destiny rather than us just telling them what to do. Would you agree with that, Jason? Is that how
Oh,
we
absolutely. Yeah, yeah. I'm always reminded of this great quote by Dr. BJ Palmer, who said, "Doctors, you have in your hands a sacred trust, guard it well." And I think it speaks highly to what you're talking about. I mean, there is an unspoken understanding. I think with all doctors, and I mean, there should be anyway, an unspoken understanding of like, I'm coming to you and you're going to help me get better. I'm going to use the word teach me to get better. Not just be a Pez dispenser and prescribe some pill, And I think that ultimately, if we go back to the Latin roots of doctor, it's docere, or one who teaches, right? And I think that you're teaching, I mean, that's what you do. I mean, you're teaching people how to reclaim their health and vitality. And we all know, everybody knows this, that you cannot do it in 3.5 minutes. I mean, you can't, it just can't happen. I mean, 6 minutes if you're lucky. You know what I mean? And then I had somebody the other day say, wow, my doctor spent 10 minutes with me the other day. I'm like, oh, wow, I bet that was a real deep dive. So, and especially, I mean, this was a person who I'm not exaggerating, 65 years old. It was my first consultation with her. She was on, and I'm going to get the number wrong, either 24 or 27 medications. I'm not even exaggerating. It was 24, maybe plus a few. And I think, what kind of care leads to somebody being on 27 medications? I mean, it's not care. And I think that's the problem.
It's negligence.
It's negligence, right? And I think that's the problem with healthcare, worldwide, really, at least in the Western countries. There's no health and there's no care in it. I mean,
And there's no continuity.
There's no continuity. It's
I could go to 5 doctors and they're going to give me 5 different methods based on their 3 minutes.
Five different drugs or more, and then you go to the pharmacist and, they're the druggist and they're filling them. And I'm thinking, how is this happening? Where is like, who's watching the watchdog? I don't know.
Where's the care?
Yeah.
There's no continuity.
It's just crazy. But I have a question for Dr. Sam. And this is from our friend, my wife, and your friend, Rachel. And she said, she said, this one's for the ladies. Because Rachel's been exploring her feminine self and she's part of some women's groups. And I think probably in Australia too, but in America, I mean, women, you got to be tough. I mean, you got to be tough to be a woman, to be successful. You got to dig in and drive and go. And I mean, it's like that traditional male, and I don't know if it's healthy for men to do that either, but it's this traditional male approach to life, like, got to attack life and you got to own life and you got to master it and all this, whatever. So Rachel's really been exploring this, and I'm going to read this really carefully because this is her question. Rachel wants to know how to not become a man in this toxic, stressful world. And she said, I'm asking for a friend. So
yeah. Look, this is really my signature work, and I'd love to leave this as my legacy on the planet. And that is, it's a switch we can switch on, but we're not taught how to switch it off. So my mum, I was born in 1969. Mum was that new generation of women who didn't want to be the sexatary anymore, who actually wanted to and could see that they could do the same mental load as a guy, and they entered the workforce. I went to uni. Women weren't going to uni really before the 80s. So there were pockets, but now it's kind of mainstream. The environment in which women still work is predominantly masculine. And we can't go into boardrooms and start crying. We can't pull out that I've had a day and I just don't, can't you feel sorry for me because I'm barely coping? Because sometimes as women we wax and wane. We're not on, and that is just how we are. It's not abnormal to be emotional. We are the emotives of the I guess the cycles and of the life force of humans. To switch it off, though, when we don't need it is a real skill. And I explored this, and I've got this book called Beauty and the Beast Within, the hormone changes making women wild. It'll come out back to front. But I wrote this book after I had what I call a hormone meltdown. And, at this stage, I'd had all my degrees and tertiary qualifications and had a clinic and had this implosion where it was a Christmas. Do you mind if I share the story? Because I think when women hear it.
Please do.
Yeah. So it was just out from Christmas. It was 8 days out from Christmas, and it was on the Gold Coast, and it gets quite hot here. And we had one of those very skinny kitchens, and we had some bifolds, and I was married at the time, and I'd had 2 kids, and invited everyone round for Christmas. I thought I'd do this. In Australia, we've got this cookbook and it's called the Australian Women's Cookbook thing, and, dinner party for 75 people and dinner party for 24. So I thought, I've always wanted to do this. Did this dinner party. All the friends arrived. Champagne, they're all out by the pool. I'm in slaving away, cooking a turkey, which I'd never done before. It was probably the equivalent of Thanksgiving for you guys. I had a ham that was baking. I had stuff bubbling away. This mess, it was about, when I say 50 degrees, it's probably like 120 Fahrenheit. I was sweating. It was ugly. But I was, I'm the ultimate woman doing all this stuff. And one of my children came in a nappy and she'd done a poop and it wafted up over the turkey. And I had my hand in this turkey and I was like, oh no, she's going to need a nappy change. And I called out to my ex-husband and I said, can you come and change so-and-so's nappy? And I'm basting this turkey and everything's, timed to the millionth of a second. And he turned around in front of everyone and he said no. And I was just like, what? And I've played water polo, a very good long shot, outside shot. And if my hand wasn't in the turkey, I would have got the steak knives and got him for sure. So I left the marriage. I had this split second of rage, which scared me a lot. And that rage was like, where's this come from? Like, it really spooked me. So I thought, well, clearly I'm not happy. We'd never fought, but I left the marriage and didn't return and went onto a deep dive of why I felt that way. Had 5 staff, lots of patients. I said, can we ask women if they feel the same? Do they get rage? And it came out that was very interesting. Women don't say they get angry. Well, they weren't back then. That I'll get irritated, people annoy me, I don't know, I've got a short fuse, I can't relax. There was this other dialogue around it. But then I was like, right, what is the cause? I went to doctors, chiropractors, everyone, you're depressed. Like, no, I'm not depressed. I know I'm not depressed, but I was struggling to relax. I did have a little bit of belly fat. I had some whiskers on my chin, and I knew that there was a lot of pressure on me. So I did a saliva test, and that's when I found my male hormone testosterone was through the roof. And we started asking patients if they'd mind if we checked theirs. We found it repetitively, particularly among, I have 4 archetypes that'll happen with, but fertile girls bumping up their testosterone. So it makes us very ballsy, for want of a better word, very not aggressive, but like we're here to do some business. And if we don't switch that off, then we stay wedged with high testosterone. Women with high testosterone become that, she's big, full on, she's intense. It switches off the ovaries because if we're in survival mode, we don't want to have babies. So that lengthens our period, or we get cysts on our ovaries, or we end up with whiskers on our everywhere, belly fat. So belly fat that won't shift in fertile women is usually high testosterone, high cortisol. And what I learned after talking to women and thousands of women, this is how simple it is to drop it. So, Rachel, this one's for your friend and everyone else who is a female and needs to know how to learn to relax. Instead of focusing on stressing less, put that aside. What I want you to do is do something that gives you joy or makes you feel supported. Now, the simplest one, and this is John Gray's work, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. Man comes home, goes straight up to the woman, embraces her and says, babe, just come here. I want to give you a hug. You do so much for everyone else, and I thank you. And it's in that embrace, and I've demonstrated this in front of thousands of people, we collapse and just feel switched off. Our oxytocin goes up. And oxytocin is the antidote to high testosterone. The thing that stops stress in its tracks, because you can't be stressed and feel supported at the same time. You can't be happy and sad at the same time. They're polar opposite. So oxytocin kicks in seconds, and it drops testosterone in seconds and drops us out of masculine into feminine very quickly.
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing all of that, and thank you for sharing your vulnerability and your story. It's interesting. Our mutual friend Alex Sharfin, I've been hanging with him quite a bit, and he shared with me a couple of interesting things that I think that tie in right here. I guess to shorten it, he said, we men have a duty to create safe spaces for the women in our lives, physically safe, of course, but also emotionally safe. and that it's our duty to be that strength. And I think that people get confused about testosterone and being a man and being manly is like it's real aggressive and this and that. But ultimately, I'm going to use a word that he used. He said that, the true art of a man is learning dominance, but it's dominating the self, not dominating others. And I find a lot of beauty in that. And in your story about just, I know that, in my relationships, whether it's with Rachel or our kids or our female friends, when I can talk to them about having a safe space, physically safe, emotionally safe, you can see the release. You can literally see, you can visually see their whole mood, affect, all of it just shifting. Just like you said, I've not thought about it in an oxytocin way and shifting the testosterone and that drive. It's super interesting to me, biochemically tying this idea of creating safe spaces with oxytocin and biochemistry. I really appreciate that. In fact, you said it so quickly, but it's mind blowing for anybody listening. This is mind blowing for the men listening. You have a duty, So I just want to underscore that.
Yeah, thank you. And polycystic ovary syndrome and endometriosis. Endo tends to be more high estrogen in my experience. PCOS, more high testosterone. The leading cause of infertility in developed countries by country mile. So women with high androgen or high testosterone production, all they need to do, I say all they need to do because it happens in seconds, is raise their oxytocin. Bye-bye IVF, bye-bye all these other incredible, metformin and diformin and all these drugs that they're putting girls on to try and mitigate their testosterone. Instead of that, get them out of fight or flight. How do we do that? We bump up oxytocin. So I call them green light activities. And, when the typical archetype, I'll just pick an archetype. And so if this is someone who's listening to this, it's not you personally, but it might sound like you. HR manager, gone to uni, been a high achiever, goes to gym, has juice for brekkie, just incredible. We've created some incredible people on the planet, but they can't relax. And these are the girls that can't have babies, who are struggling to have babies because their testosterone is up. And they're the ones who want to know today, how do I fix this? And yoga's not fixing it, but yoga will get them there. Relaxing will get them there. Breathing will get them there. Having more support is the highway to get there. It's the quickest way to get there. So oxytocin's the antidote to PCOS, and protein and mitigating carbs. And if you work with men, in the frontline services as a police officer, as an ambulance officer, in law or banking, you need to leave work at work and step out of it and find that switch down. Otherwise, testosterone stays up and you become very blokey. And that's just on the PCO. But I did want to also comment about what you said about what you and Alex have discussed, and I've heard other men have these conversations. And I am a strong woman. I need a guy who's stronger. But I don't want to be the man of the relationship. I want a man who can nurture and support me. And someone described it, I'm very visual. They said it's like a dog bowl where dogs drink out of, it's a ceramic bowl, and guys are the ceramic edges and we're the water in the middle. And that's how the relationship should be. We should be able to flip-flop around. The guy holds the strength on the outside for us.
I love that analogy. And speaking of nurturing and supporting, we're going to take a quick break for our sponsors.
Wow. Everything I heard over the past 10 to 15 minutes, I've been over here calm like a bomb, just stewing, thinking, and really considerate of the way you guys, Sam and Dr. Jason, have been flowing back and forth. And thank you for addressing that question of how to save women from becoming men. And thank you also for being transparent about having the little rotundness to the belly and a few whiskers popping. I was thinking about myself. I was thinking about myself. I'm like, I have a little rotundness to my belly and I have a few whiskers popping. I'm glad I'm staying in my masculine, damn it. But I have like a 2 to 3-fold conversational piece. It's not so much a question because I really don't like propose to me questions unless I have like some type of a diatribe before it. But there's a lot of people out there that are confused. We've already addressed that. And there's probably other people out there that are fearful of hormone therapy and conflicting information. and there's confusion around bioidentical and synthetic hormones, and there's shame around discussing hormone issues, especially for men. And like I said, if your boner's not popping, who are you going to talk to? Is it Ghostbusters? No, it ain't them. You got to talk to somebody that's qualified to help you. But also, you mentioned women, if they get into certain frames of health, that their belly fat drops and their masculinity signatures drop, and they are less aggressive in a way, or get out of my way, as you said. But what's the solution for men that have got these glorified dad bods that look like they're ready for, I don't
Sumo
know.
wrestling.
Yeah, like they're men that can't go back to their glory days. And if you ask them to run a block, they'd probably fall over and have the EMT there. What's your solution for these blokes, as you say, filling the boots?
Mm. Yes. There's a lot to unpack. Weight in itself is a whole conversation because it's what we eat and what we're thinking and doing while we're eating that create the hormone confusion. And quality of food is important. There's two parts there I really do want to address, and that's bioidenticals and HRT and testosterone replacement as part of that. And also just answering, maybe we'll come back to that. In the first instance, I'll answer about guys with a weight issue. Men are hardwired to move. And if they're not moving, they're denying themselves a biological pathway to health. Moving should be, squatting, middle level, and reaching up. So a static jump will achieve that. We know that high intensity training, 15 minutes 3 times a week, increases testosterone. Pick up a spear, go and catch some fish. Male activities will increase testosterone, and that's a component of this. But the reason why a lot of guys are carrying extra weight is from high cortisol levels, which is a stress hormone. And when guys produce cortisol, it suppresses testosterone. So straight away, if they're stressed, they're not making testosterone. The other double-edged sword to this is they might be producing enough testosterone, but if they're low on zinc, they'll spin it down to estrogen, or it might go to DHT. Estrogen is, which is what I was saying before, testosterone, estrogen, same pathway. It aromatizes, though, in men if they're low on zinc. And high estrogen will morph men into women. So, the breasts and the hips and the belly fat, and change them into an hourglass, not a straight up and down glass. And zinc-rich foods, so guys really should be eating something with zinc in it each day. And I call it a handful of nuts for your nuts. So, nuts like pecan nuts, walnuts, even seeds, chia seeds, sesame seeds, a handful of nuts for your nuts to keep your testosterone healthy is imperative. But zinc's also found in shellfish, meats, leafy vegetables. It's found in so many things, and it's used in so many processes in the body, including the immune system. But very importantly for a guy, it stops the testosterone being shunted down into estrogen. That's part of it from a hormone perspective with weight with guys. They have to be exercising. Even, I had someone yesterday said, I've got a sore ankle. I can't exercise at the moment. I'm like, let's just go from your knees up then, leave your ankle out of the equation. I'm pretty sure there's some activities you could do. I'm not going to need that left ankle. So activity and moving the body is really important. And I guess tying back into that high cortisol component is taking time off the wheel and this doesn't even sound like it should, and I haven't talked about food with weight either, but we need to switch off. Guys do need to have time out. In Australia, we call it they go into their cave, as long as their cave doesn't go for 6 hours, every night drinking beer, watching movies, but just a 10, 15-minute exit to regroup goes a long way for men. And food. Food, I just see what the rubbish people eat. And it's early in the morning here. This morning, I twaddled off to try and find some healthy food before we sat down. And it's like airports, it's like takeaways, it's like this big doorstop bread, it's croissants, it's all this carbohydrate, nutrient poor junk we're putting into our mouths, thinking it's filling us up, and having milk lattes and, cold iced coffee, this and that. And that food will also, we're over consuming. And if you don't go and hunt and gather like I did this morning, you can even call it to your doorstep. So all those facets need to be addressed when it comes to men and weight, but it can start with something very simple, just like moving your body.
Great, great, great strategies and very simple, but once again, takes accountability. And accountability is something that they need guidance with, and they have to have a purpose in their soul to do it. So I think it's really clear on the strategy and listening to it. I'm sure there's a lot of people that will listen to this in the future. Probably over 100,000 people will hit this episode, and they're going to be damn curious. And they're going to say, I want to optimize my life. I want to optimize my health. And I'm sure that people are going to jump over to our show notes and check out your resources that we'll share at the closing of today's interview with you. It's been like such an honor to have you on all the way over there from the Big Island, Australia, and sharing your knowledge and your love for helping people. I can tell you have a big heart and a big career. And I feel like you're just getting started. You're still publishing books, you're podcasting. By the way, what are the podcasts called?
So I've got two. One is Hop into Health, like hop like a rabbit into health. And I've got my male series on there. There's a really good conversation with Matt Legg, who's a biochemist, naturopath, about testosterone pathways. That's a really good podcast to listen to. And my other podcast is called At Hormones with Sam. So Hormones with Sam, I talk about it's slant on both and sleep and why sleep's disrupted and why we gain weight and cortisol and unpacking hormones a lot more and the impact they have on people's lives. So, and I discuss HRT, and I'm not a fan of any exogenous or external hormone replacement. And I go through that in the podcast why. So, yeah.
Well, maybe you'll pod swap eventually with Dr. Jason Bradley and host him on to one of your amazing shows.
I'd be honored. It'd be fun.
Yeah.
It'd be a lot of fun. And
Yeah,
we can do it when we fly to Perth together and then head over to Sydney. We can do it live and in person.
That'd be great.
I'm just going to keep attaching myself to James's, speaking engagement over in Australia next year. So,
yeah. If anybody's curious, it's called the Innate Summit, IN8 Summit, over in Perth, and I'm going to be one of their featured presenters there. And it's a real honor for me. That'll be the 10th country that I've presented in over the past handful of years, and we're taking this message of chiropractic global. And, the other part I told you about my prospecting out there doing my advocacy work, scheduling patients. The part where we didn't share with you is I've done on a Chiro Hustle podcast, which is the number one chiropractic podcast in the world. We just recorded our 754th episode today, and I've been doing that for 8 years. So I might just seem like a bloke that fell off the turnip truck. They figured out how to turn a mic and a camera on and off. It looks that way, but quite a bit of experience behind the deck here, talking to people about topics that matter. And I reached out to Dr. Jason about I don't know, 4 years ago and said, "Hey, let's do a show," and it wasn't the right time. And then I was able to reach out to him about a year ago now.
almost to the day. Almost
We've
to
been we've been cooking this one up, and he said he was ready. So I said, let's call it Get Better Faster, and let's teach the world how to get better faster. And let's host people out there that are subject matter experts that are going to be a part of our new constellation in the sky, the Avengers of Healthcare. And we're going to create people together that are going to be able to help people with their knowledge, skills, and resources, because there's nothing else out there like this. So once again, Dr. Jason's a real pro. I feel thankful to work by him. And if we get a chance to have him jump over to the big
Yeah.
island of Australia with us, and be fun to see you in person, and to maybe go forage for some healthy meals, and see what we can do together to keep on the right path to health and happiness. But Dr. Jason, do you have any closing words today?
Boy, I just wanted to say, Sam, we've known each other for many years at this point, and I'm just so honored that you're on the show today. Thank you for your time. You blew my mind more than once, and my show notes over here they're just insane. I'm gonna have to organize them, but I mean, you're just dropping like gold bombs like over and over and over again. So I wish I would have said at the beginning of the show, get a pen and paper out, keep notes if you're listening, because there's going to be amazing, truth coming out of this. So thank you. The other thing I wanted to say is, as promised, we're coming up on our 90-minute mark. And a lot of times I feel like we're just getting in the stride of the show, and we could go on for another 90 minutes or 2 hours. So I would love to have you back on. We'll get that scheduled, but we didn't even get a chance to talk about corporate burnout and all the
Oh, menopause
yeah,
or
menopause. And do we need to suffer with, hot flashes, vaginal atrophy, anorgasmia, weakness and pain, memory issues, among other symptoms? I mean, I have this highlighted in yellow, like, ask Sam this thing. And then I had a follow-up question is, why are they still suffering? But I'm going to dangle that carrot, we're going to talk about that next time. We'll have you on for part 2. And again, just thank you. Thank you so much. I loved our time today. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for the opportunity, guys. And James, I love what you're doing to a chiropractor. And one of the, we touched on this earlier, that I don't have all the solutions, and it would be so egotistical to think I do. And I know Dr. Jason doesn't either. So it's, when it comes to health, I always say to people, you need a minimal of 3. You need a great GP, you need someone who's a natural advisor, and you need a bodywork person, whether it's a masseuse, a chiropractor, acupuncturist. You need the minimum of a triad, even more. Like, it's looking after our health is an incredible asset, and everything else means nothing if we don't have health. So thank you guys for what you're doing as well, for people to have these, listen to these conversations and educate people. It's great.
Well, Sam, people ask me all the time what my hobby is, and I said my hobby is staying healthy.
Yeah. Right. And but people can follow me on Instagram. I'm not fabulous on Instagram, but I'm giving it a crack. I've got TV interviews, and for men on Men's Healthy Edge, there's a free ebook they can download, and a testosterone quiz. On the Beau Patrick, I've got a free ebook for women on menopause. So I spend a lot of time, like Dr. Jason, doing videos and content so people can educate themselves. At the end of the day, we just want to see a better world and a educated
Yeah.
one. So,
Yes.
thank you so much.
So the conversation, Sam, has been absolutely eye-opening and transformative. I'm sure everybody out there that's watching, or will watch, or will listen, will walk away with notebook full of strategies and questions for themselves. And for our listeners, if you're struggling with fatigue, burnout, brain fog, low libido, or just feeling like you've lost your edge, whether you're a man or a woman, which I think that was great. We touched on both the chromosomes today. Sam has created comprehensive programs that address hormone health naturally. With 38 years of clinical experience, she's helped thousands reclaim their vitality without relying on synthetic hormones, or pharmaceutical band-aids. Her testosterone testing programs and hormone balancing programs, you can find them over at the Get Better Faster show notes. They offer real science-based solutions that work with your body, not against it. Remember, no one has come to save you, but solutions like Sam's can prove you can save yourself. Sam, thank you again for sharing your decades of wisdom with us. And to all of our GBF Nation, thank you for listening and for your continued support. You know the best way to show your support is share this episode with somebody who needs to hear this message, especially if they're dealing with chronic fatigue, hormone issues, or feeling like they're just surviving instead of thriving. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode and get the behind the scenes tomfoolery we've got coming your way. We've got more incredible guests lined up who are going to blow your mind with real solutions for reclaiming your health, your happiness, and your life. Until next time, keep questioning everything and keep getting better faster. Jason, it was a pleasure to work with you today. And Sam, thank you for being our esteemed guest.
Thank you, James. Thank you, Sam.
Thank you, guys.
All right. Love everybody.
Part 2.
Thanks for tuning in to the Get Better Faster podcast. Join the movement and visit getbetterfasterpodcast.com to find all our episodes, micro content, and resources to help you and your family get better faster.
I am the same.